What we've got here is an engine house, as many of you will say, yeah, well, I know that much. This is a pumping engine. The engine was built by Harvey's of Hale in 1829 and installed here for pumping from a 60-inch cylinder, single piston inside that worked a big beam that was over the front wall, which we'll see later. And as the steam sucked down, as they inject steam into the cylinder, then cold water would bring the piston down, raising the beam on the front. And if you're ever in doubt of the size of an engine, you're visiting an engine house, if you measure the back door, that'll give you a pretty good indication of the size of the cylinder, because the cylinder was always taken in through the back door. So this is, like I say, a 60-inch. It had 3 boiler houses, and so if you're seeing the stack out that end, you're wondering why it's so far from the engine house. There were 3 boiler houses here that connected to that, and the air was then drawn from that right under the boilers and then up again and up the chimney. So it was quite a dramatic draft to keep the boilers very hot and the burning of the coal very efficient. So the island disappeared for the fact that when they scrapped these things, to get a boiler out, you've got to take the house down to get the boiler out. So a lot of engine houses, you don't see the boiler houses in Cornwall. There are very few left with the boiler houses intact because, like I say, the boilers were extracted to take them scrap. And that happened here until the 1930s. The mine kept going pretty much. It's been worked almost continuously for 500 years. So not in this, but various setups along the back of the load here. So we'll move round to the front. So this is Leeds shaft, named after the Duke of Leeds, of course, who was the mineral owner who had Godolphin from the late 1800s. Leeds shaft was sunk directly on the load. The load is the vein that runs right through here, which is called the load. This is great work load, runs from here, probably 500 yards, 600 yards in that direction. It was worked and well into Mossbreed, another 600, 800 yards that way. And so they call that the strike of the load, where it was still bearing ore in that distance. And it was worked, like I say, open cast. If you walk down the road, which you will in a minute, there's a huge open work there where it was open cast. The back of the load was worked probably down to nearly 60 feet before they started underground mining there, and that is known as the Great Work. So that's where the name of the place came from. So you've got your load, it's the vein travels like that, but dips down, they say it dips north. So it's dipping that way. So where the load outcrops there, like I say, on the road, if you followed it down, you would go down on the diagonal. Of course, it doesn't go straight down on the diagonal, it does this all the way down. Because it paid them to find the load as they were working shafts down to get deeper, it paid them to follow the load because they were making money all the time they were extracting the ore. But for an efficient engine to work properly, you need to go vertically. So by 1829, it was decided that they would sink a straight shaft here to intercept the load like that, then go on through it, and then put tunnels in to the load various levels to make it make the engine pumps very efficient. So you had your beam coming over the top there, great cast iron beam. You've probably seen photographs of them. Some of them, the bigger ones, weighed about 40 tons, so you can tell how fast these pumping engines were. And it worked pump rods probably anything from 12 to 18 inches which is square also, and 60 feet long. Then they would have a pump at 60 feet, but also would couple another rod so that it would bring another set of pumps another 60 feet down. They were plunger pole pumps. They were like an H piece. And so the pump would run down and push the water up. So it was forcing the water up the rising main. Now, what we've got, the adit level is at 180 feet. That means they drove a tunnel from down near Godolphin Village, just off level, coming up the hill, and it gets into this here, and this shaft at 180 feet down. So anything above that level at that time, they could mine without any problem with pumps at all. Once they went below that, they would pump up to adit, and the water would run out of the adit that way. So this shaft, Leeds shaft, is the deepest one on the lode, and this is 1,200 feet. So you've got 180 feet of the water, and then you've got another 1,000 feet pretty much of workings below that. And this was taken out, well down the hill towards Deer Park Shaft. Deer Park Shaft is the last main shaft on the lode, which is, I think, about 400 yards probably down the hill from here. You've got numerous shafts that go into the screen here. That was extensively worked as well. I think there's probably nearly 20 shafts on the whole run through here. And because it was worked by independent families when the mine was shallow, you had little independent tinners working in groups, bringing up the ore and paying dues to the Duke of Leeds and the Godolphins before that. But as it got deeper and deeper, water became a serious problem, so they needed a pump and the adit to make life easier for them. And once it was taken on by a former mining company, then they would bid for underground mines in those same families. But because you had so many shafts that these people had put down over the hundreds of years, Greatbrook was always a well-ventilated mine because it kept the air circulated very well. It was quite a healthy mine to work in if there was such a thing. So this is Leeds shaft. Now, you could imagine you've got 1,000 feet of concrete, which are that square, a vast weight on these things. So that engine would have had to work very, very hard to make those, to rise and fall the rod. So they balance boxes in different places. So it was attached to the front rods there, pivoted here like this, and on the back was a huge box which they filled with rocks. So that would balance the weights of the pump rods here. So as it went up and down, the weight of the rods. Now, because they were always getting deeper and adding more and more weight to it, they would put further balance boxes underground as well. So you can imagine there are areas down there as big as this. So it was a major undertaking keeping these engines operating and efficient. But they were super efficient once they got the right weights on the balance boxes. And there was a thing called Leeds engine reporter, and it the efficiencies of some of these engines. And they would report on how many gallons could be raised 1 foot by a bushel of coal. That was how it was judged. And it was almost like holding the box of its day. You were number one in Leeds engine report, and then everybody got the full engine. And I think the two engines that were on the Godolphin lines down there, they were, I think, 2 and 3 in Leeds engine report. And I think they were something like 43. They bagged all the cylinders, they put the balance boxes in, and the whole, they made sure that the boilers ran efficiently, no black smoke coming out of the chimney. Once this So you had harvest of hail, steam engines or smaller iron founders as well, providing water wheels, all the bits and pieces that went with the mining industry. So this brand new in 1829. It was refurbished in the 1850s when the mine was reworked. You always had quiet. Pretty much through the bad times. So you had the pumping engine here, and just about 20 yards in that direction, you had a mining engine, and that wound from the headgear here as well, and on numerous shafts, they could take the mining all the way out there. So it's a very efficient mining engine. But normally they're at right angles to the shaft, but because the load came away and went out across street that way, the engine house was offset just there. All that's left now is just the loading where the flywheel was. The engine house went probably in the 1930s. It was dismantled. But it was a huge mine here. You had all sorts of buildings that went with this. Sorry? That then went down here. Yeah. You had this was I think a 3-compartment shaft. So you had a ladderway there, you had a skipway, and then you had the section where the pump pipes came up and down as well. So it was a 3-section shaft. When I was a kid, all the timber was still in it because the last working in the 1930s. That's when all the concrete was put around and shaft timbers refurbished. All pitch pine, I would say 10 inches in cross section, timbered out all the way down to the water. You could drive up here then through there. It was and a great big circle here where cars could turn around, all that sort of thing. And somebody came up one night, they had some cars to dump, and they dumped 13 cars down. Took all the timbers out, right down to the water. So almost destroyed what was here, really. But I can remember when there was a very flimsy barbed wire fence around it, and rotting timbers across here. And a friend of mine, Richard Pauling, used to take great delight in walking across this timber here, with this huge drop below. It was also useful for farmers if you had a livestock die. There was a chap, Morgan Tripp from Roland Farm, he had a pig that died. So rather than take it to the dispose of it and bury it, brought it up here, chucked it down, and it hung up on a timber about 30 feet. What was the width of the boat? Vein? Yeah, how wide is it? Normally about round here in the Great Wood District, they're about 18 inches wide. So working that, a lot of the old style of mining, you would take that out first and then widen a little bit so that you could get through. But wheelbarrow mining. But in the 1930s, when they were working this on a more serious method, and Lady Gwendolyn mined down towards Burmo as well, all part of the same company, they brought the camboard men in. And the camboard men opened it up to 4 feet wide. And the locals were absolutely disgusted. Oh, won't they make no money now? All that old rubbish going in as well. Oh, yeah. But the mine didn't last long once the camboard men. I mean, it had to happen because you needed trams, you needed to be able to get equipment through. What you had before that basically was a wheelbarrow mine. But it was dragged kicking and screaming into the 20th century. And of course, camboard loads could be anything up to 4 or 5 feet wide, so you work at the full width of the load. But here, the old miners used to work out that section first, and if they needed to take a bit more, then they could. So, yes, it was a balancing act really of how to make money, but how not to take the waste at the same time.
What was the percentage of tin?
Sorry,
What was the
percentage? Usually they worked on a couple of percent, I suppose. Here, yeah, that was yeah, yeah. But it was it was what they called great work was sort of a bunches. You know, they would hit a very rich patch of ore, and they pull out a sturt. So that if you put a bid in and said it was very poor, and they would pay you a lot more to work the poorer parts to keep it working, if they hit a sturt, then they would work night and day through that month of their contract to get that out as quickly as they could before the next bidding came for the next month. But if they found that sturt the day before their contract was up, they would bury that up and pretend that it was still poor until the next bidding on the next day again. So yeah, it was quite quite a thing. Yeah, but yes, that was great. But we got to it closed in 1938. The engine house then, it was all run on. They had a steam generator there, generated electric. They had electric miners here working on the shaft, and they used this as the ore bin. So all the ore that came up from underground was put in their works. So yeah, but we finished up. It got tin price was dropping, but this was 1938. The war was imminent, and they were banking almost, although they didn't know what war would come. They knew there would be government investment when if war came. But of course, Chamberlain came back with this piece of paper, Peace in Our Time, and great work was closed within 3 weeks of 1938. My grandfather was the manager here at the time, and my father was. I'll tell you the story about my father a bit further down, but he went with the management and the Flicker mine, working there in tungsten as well as tin. And then he went from there to Gabor during the war, and he said the amount of investment in Gabor mine during the war, by the end of the war, the mine was 4 years ahead of the bill. So that was the injection of cash that Gabor had to make that. And it actually closed till 1989. So my father always maintained that that was the sort of injection of cash you need to make that money. So that was great.